Well, I'm sure you've been outside and enjoying all of the cherry blossoms. I was so excited I wore hot pink pants tonight just because of the cherry blossoms. I'm sure you're also aware that Macon is full of people. At least that's what happened to me earlier with all the traffic on Zebulon. As people come around and enjoy the festivities. People who never really come that frequently even into Macon will suddenly appear. And what's fascinating also, not just about the cherry blossoms, but people also who don't know that today is Shabbat HaGadol, which is I'm sure why we are all here, because it's Shabbat HaGadol, the big Shabbos right before Passover, are excited also to celebrate that beyond just cherry blossom. What's fascinating too about the Cherry Blossom Festival is that people who don't normally slow down and look at the trees and the blossoms and everything all around them do stop and look. Some people even stop right in front of me in my neighborhood and get out of the car while I'm right behind them to take pictures. I live on the Cherry Blossom Trail. It's so fun sometimes when they do it without a signal. After, of course, my annoyance decided to that moment a few days ago, I kept thinking, honestly, what made this woman stop right in front of me with no signal and start taking a picture of a tree? Why do we stop for the blossoms? And it got me also thinking how much the opposite of stopping is true. How much we all just go, 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 and then go. We don't stop. In fact, we go running into those very, very long TSA lines wrapped around the terminal. We keep running, hoping that we're not going to miss our connections for those planned Passover trips or other events coming up. Anxious to get there so that our travel plans don't unravel. We didn't stop when we read headlines about Iran or Israel and felt the familiar old dread settle into our chests, wondering what is going to happen. We didn't stop when we fill our tanks and watch the numbers, as I'm sure you have, I have too, climb and climb, and thought quietly, how much more climbing is it going to go? I'm sure we just go without even thinking. And yet, hundreds of thousands of people for the past week and a half or 2 weeks have come and stopped and looked at the trees. Tonight is another one of those moments of pause. It's Shabbat HaGadol, the great Shabbat. The Shabbat of the threshold, the Shabbos right before Passover, and it's the Shabbat, frankly, inside of the entire Exodus story itself. The Talmud teaches in Tractate Shabbat that it was on this very Shabbos when the Israelites were commanded to take the lamb. Not yet slaughter it, they were just told to take it and bring it home and hold it and wait. And the Torah, a medieval commentary, adds something extraordinary in that story, that the Egyptians were watching them take their lamb into their home and said nothing. Miracle in and of itself, disguised as silence as they tied their lambs according to the Torah to their bedposts and just waited. A little strange sight, but either way, the Egyptians were there. Pharaoh had not released them. The plagues had come and gone and come and gone, and there they are sitting in their homes, and the lamb is in the corner, waiting and thinking they must have been terrified by all of the plagues and what was transpiring. The chaos around them kept going, and conditions kept changing. And, well, nothing looked different, though, from their outside, at least for the Egyptians who saw the Israelites home, who just sat there watching. And yet, the Israelites inside were celebrating Shabbat with a sheep inside. Not knowing why they were told to do that, and slowing down just a minute. They didn't know that things were going to be changing rather rapidly in an extreme way. They didn't get to see the calendar from the outside. They didn't get to see the story from the outside for that matter. They were living in the in-between, just like all of us in the midst of some chaos. They all had no instructions. Take the lamb, wait, trust, Moses has got it covered. On Wednesday night, we will gather around the Seder table in our own homes, and we will also take a moment and pause and do something different. Before we even begin to tell the story of slavery and liberation, before we get to the plagues or the splitting of the sea and the exciting drama of every little thing that transpires, we pick up a piece of karpas, of parsley, and we dip it into some salt water, and then we eat it. That's it, no fanfare, just and go. And most people rush past it. But what if we waited for a moment? The green parsley and the salt water sitting on the table, the spring and the joy of new growth next to the bowl representing the tears that the Israelite slaves cried into, or all of their tears, I didn't cry into a bowl, but all of their tears held in that bowl. And both in the same hand at the same time. The rabbis, of course, were not careless when they were designing all of these rituals. They didn't just put things out on the Seder by accident. The karpas was there because they knew something we keep trying to forget. You don't get to have the green and the joy without some salt water. You don't get the new growth without tears watering the land. You don't get liberation without the long, dark memory of what you were liberated from. Karpas, therefore, doesn't resolve the tension. It holds that tension. That small act, the dipping of the greens into salt, the most honest thing we do all night, it says both things are true. It says grief is real, growth is real, and we're not going to choose between either. And as I walked around Macon this week, I watched people taking pictures, I watched children running under branches, I saw live music downtown, I watched a woman standing still, completely under a tree, surrounded by cherry blossoms, just taking a beat, eyes up, like she was receiving something. The cherry trees, by the way, this year did not check the news. They just bloomed on time for once. It was exciting. Sometimes we all know they bloom before the festival and sometimes after, but this year during the festival. They didn't wait for the geopolitical situation to resolve itself or stabilize. They didn't wait for the price of oil to come down or the lines in those pesky terminals to slowly dwindle. They bloomed because it's the season for them to do so. Because something in creation keeps its own rhythm, its own calendar, because underneath all of the chaos that feels so loud and so permanent, there's a quiet rhythm that doesn't stop. Our tradition has a word for this. It has many words, but this one I'm sure we all know because we're going to say it on Wednesday, the Seder, the order. As in the order of the plate, but Seder doesn't just mean the order of the Haggadah, the order of the ritual. It doesn't just mean a ritual order of service, it also means a depth of structure underneath things. It's the grammar underpinning creation. The Passover Seder is not called a Seder because we read the Haggadah in a particular sequence. It is called a Seder because it points us toward the Seder, the order of the universe. The order that persists even when we cannot see it, even when everything feels chaotic, even when we're sitting in Goshen with a lamb in the corner, not knowing what's going to come next. There it is. There's that order. The cherry trees are blooming. The karpas has bloomed. It's been cut. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything is going to be fine right now because, well, we don't know what exactly is going to come out and about. The fear about Israel, not irrational. The fear about Iran, also not irrational. The doubting of what's happening should be taken seriously. The economic pressures that many of us in the room already are feeling, real. The tiredness that brings, equally real. But here's what I do know. The Israelites in Egypt were also struggling. They were not fine. They were sitting in their own chaos, wondering what was going to happen. and the Seder was there anyway. Spring came anyway. The order underneath things did not wait for the suffering to end before it showed up. The karpas is green because, well, growth is green. It's new. It grew in the same world where the salt water and the tears exist. It grew anyway. And so here's what I offer you this Shabbat Hagadol. Not necessarily a solution to the chaos, but an offer, an invitation to pay attention to the Seder and the order and the rhythm around all of us. The cherry blossoms have bloomed on schedule. Shabbos arrived on schedule. Passover is coming, never late for 3,000 years, on schedule, here it comes. Your body, by the way, on schedule, breathing at night when you were asleep, even without your overt permission. The sun will set exactly on schedule. And underneath all of the chaos, Seder holds, order holds. So when you sit at the Seder table this Wednesday evening, when you pick up that small piece of parsley and dip it in the salt water, remember that you are doing what Jews have done in every generation of chaos and fear and exhaustion. You're holding the green, the karpas, and the salt together. You're saying both are true. The order and the chaos come hand in hand. And you are trusting more in the rhythm, knowing that some things just are constant. It's not naivety, by the way. It's a defiant act of faith. Shabbat Shalom.